Battlestar Galactica Season 3, Episode 15 is over, but we have to go fracking down the hatch here on RHAP. We know scripted TV, it's a day in the life here on Down the Hatch and on Battlestar Galactica. I'm Josh Wigler. Joining me to take you through a day in his life, it's the great Mike Bloom.
Josh, were you like twiddling a dimple on your cheek as you said a day in the life? Like,
I like to twiddle a dimple.
Is this supposed to be reminiscent of like the Copper Tone Kid? Like, look at this wholesome day.
Yeah.
I mean, you would say like, is this an atypical day or is this a typical day? I guess I should say happy belated wedding anniversary to Bill and Carol Ann
Yes.
Adama. But obviously, he was not able to keep his marriage together. He was able to keep another one intact, which I suppose is the consummate example of paying it forward.
Yes. Okay. Well, we are constantly paying it forward by going to the Battlestar Galactica universe and talking about each and every single episode. Mike's first time through, my something time through. This is a no spoiler zone. And today, in this day in the life, drama. Mike, we've got some trauma maybe as well, as Big Bill Adama is, I don't know if I want to say celebrating his wedding anniversary to the late, not so great Carol Ann Adama, Mike. Meanwhile, that's not the only trouble in paradise we're dealing with. Paradise, different show.
I was going to say.
We are dealing with some friction between Chief Tyrrell and his lady pal, Callie. And we're gonna have them have to like go through a whole For All Mankind situation here. Are you a For All Mankind guy? Are you in the fam?
So I am not. No. So correct me. Is that the one on Apple TV that's like the alternate universe where the Russians and Americans, like the space race continued?
The Russians landed on the moon first, and that continued the space race.
That's what it is. Okay. And Sonya Walger is in that.
I believe an American gets the achievement first. We're just like, we did it. History's over. We don't have to take care of anything else. No need to do more space stuff. But here, competition is the spirit.
Yeah, so I just learned about this, that Ronald D. Moore also, was he the creator of For All Mankind or just like played an important role behind the scenes?
He is one of the creators of For All Mankind. He is not as involved in the day-to-day as he used to be, but this is, I believe, my understanding is this is the show that he is the most involved in. The heights of For All Mankind make so much sense when you know that it's from Ronald D. Moore. The lows of For All Mankind maybe make some sense when you find out it's from Ronald D. Moore. I only bring it up because the situation that Chief and Callie are in, without spoiling the specifics, very reminiscent of one of the more iconic beats of For All Mankind. So if that is a tantalizing tease for you to get into Rob Cesternino's favorite show, or one of his favorite shows, he always says about For All Mankind, that's the show that's made just for him. Then maybe you want to go check out some more Ronald D. Moore and go check out For All Mankind, if this episode was the one that inspired you to do that.
That's interesting, because I know that Ronald D. Moore obviously cut his teeth on Star Trek before coming over to do BSG. And I recall a storyline, Josh, I'm not sure if you do, in one of the hit Next Generation episodes. I think it was called Trapped, where, you know, a bunch of freaky shit happens on the Enterprise for the umpteenth time. And I remember very well during this episode a storyline where it's Geordi LaForge and it is Beverly Crusher that are locked inside the airlock. And there are these like hazardous materials that tipped over in the ensuing turbulence, and they had to like open up the airlock to eject it, while also like holding on for dear life in true chaotic TV fashion. So that's all that I can think of. Though I suppose when you're making space-based shows, there are only a limited number of options that can exist dramatically around the entire idea of a faulty airlock. So
yes,
no fault to Ronald D. Moore for kind of just hitting the same beat multiple times.
So he's hitting the same beat multiple times. I'll
also say Disaster is actually the name of it, not Trapped, of Next Generation.
I'll say that when something reminiscent of this happens on For All Mankind, much better and much more iconic on For All Mankind.
Okay.
Just I'll take the free shot, and if you've seen the two shows, I cannot imagine you disagree. But today we are not talking about For All Mankind. We're talking about a day in the life of Bill Adama and the rest here in the 15th episode of season 3. We're getting close to the end of season 3.
You're already like, don't worry, we're getting to the end.
Well, I guess, we'll talk about that for sure. I will use this as an opportunity to tell you all that another hiatus is coming up on Down the Hatch. I want to set the expectations here now. We will be back online next week to talk about Battlestar Galactica Season 3, Episode 16. Then we're going to go off on a multi-week hiatus. I will be traveling and will not be able to record Down the Hatch. We will return with the final 4 episodes of Season 3 at the start of April. So one more episode in March, then we're finishing Season 3 in April. So don't go looking for a podcast. It's not going to pop up. That's the scheduled plan. Make sure you're subscribed. You'll never miss an episode, and you will not miss those episodes when they drop in April. Down the Hatch, wherever you get your podcasts. Mike, to go back to the question that we were dancing around just now, how you feeling? How you feeling here in the midst of season 3?
I mean, the good news is this week's episode was a noticeable step up.
Yes.
From the Woman King.
The Woman King.
The bad news is it's a noticeable step up from the Woman King, which is to say it's an episode of Battlestar Galactica that is not either Black Market or the Woman King.
Sure.
Nowhere to go but up. I think I have a hunch this might be an episode that, especially from Bill's perspective, the more we get into, the more I am going to enjoy, because there's a lot of stuff that I was interested, especially when it was first introduced, that I was really excited to get into, that maybe I don't feel got into it as much as I wanted to.
Okay.
Like, I understand the analogies and similes that exist, and much like George Lucas said, the situation between Callie and Tyrell, how it rhymes with Adama and Carol Ann, of like, he's a workaholic who, puts a strain on the family life, and how Adama wasn't able to save his marriage, but maybe he'll be able to save this one. I think when you unlock such a big part of a character's backstory, I kind of wanted more attention to be given to it. Well, at the same time, I like the direction that they were going. Like, the way that Lee talked about his relationship with his mother, I thought was so interesting. And I feel like it's the first time in a long time we have really dealt with the Adama family dynamic, not since season 1, when they're like, shit, well, we got to have a Zach episode to see what was going on with him and Starbuck. It seems like we haven't really focused on that due to, obviously, larger things at play. And so I'm also always appreciative as well of, like, whenever we get inside the glorious head of Big Bill Adama. So there are definitely moments and thematics I really liked about this episode. Maybe the execution is not like incredibly top tier excellent, but I think it's a very solid, if maybe unmemorable episode when I look back on the spectrum of season 3. But I will say that is considerably better than the past couple of episodes and what they've given me.
Last week, we tried to speculate on what a day in the life would be about, and cards on the table. Now that we've watched the episode, I was like, I cannot recall if Mike is close or not to figuring out what this episode is, because I don't remember this one at all.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
I just didn't remember it. I just didn't really remember that, like, Adama is like sort of like mourning the ghost of his dead wife. Like, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't matter all that much. The things that matter a lot more in this episode, I remember. I don't want to identify all of them, but there are definitely things in here that are going to matter, and we'll be tracking moving forward for certain.
Yeah, like when Chief Tyrell the Cylon almost dies in the vacuum of space.
Right, yeah. Well, that could have been an interesting revelation, right? That would have certainly answered your question.
Like, I was halfway expecting it, of like, really ends in tragedy, of like, oh my God, I thought this fluff episode ends with these two characters, and then Chief Tyrell wakes up in the goo pod, and that would have been great.
That would have been rad. That would have been rad if something like that could have happened. So who knows if something like that's in the future, Mike Bloom. I think you're at least sketching out what would be an awesome scene on Battlestar Galactica.
Okay, all right.
I just think that sounds like a fun scine. I'm not saying it's happening. I'm saying it would be fun.
Let's put Chief Tyrell in more mortal danger.
That's your fantasy, Mike. That's your fantasy. That's your fantasy. I would love to know more about your Battlestar Galactica fantasies, actually. I wish that you had like a column on here. You're Mr. Fantasy. Dear Mr. Fantasy, I'd like to know what your fantasy is for Lee Adama now that he's been stuck in the LVPs all season long. How's he going to get out? And then what would it be signed by? Yours truly, Lee's, I don't know. I don't know why I was going to say Lee's dong. That does. That's where
Leah
my head went.
Dongma.
Leah Dongma. It's someone else's dong that we should be worried about in this episode. Hot dong.
Hot dong. Hot dong.
Hot dong. Hot
Oh,
dong.
hot dog would be all right. I think I found my new call sign.
Yeah.
Come here, hot dog.
Hot dong. Yeah. I got to tell you, the hot dog and Hilo thing cracks me up. And I had forgotten about that scene being in this episode, but I'd remembered an exchange happening at some point between the two of them, and it just like knocking me sideways. So when it happened in this one, I was dying. I was loving it.
It's one of these rare plot points in BSG that I actually hope does not continue forward.
I don't remember it continuing at all.
Good. I don't want there to be an episode of like, oh no, there's a venereal disease going on amongst the big G. Everyone watch their big V's and big D's.
Yeah. The big STD is the name of that episode. The BSG STD. Okay, well, let's just talk about this episode of BSG here on DTH. It is A Day in the Life. Originally aired February 18th, 2007.
Oh, post Valentine's Day.
Post Valentine's Day. So we know what Hot Dog was doing on V-Day. Directed by Rod Hardy, written by Mark Verheyen, and it goes a little something like this. It begins with Colonel Ty visiting his buddy Bill with the daily log, and he's wishing him a happy anniversary. At first, you see Adama in bed with a woman. And I don't know if you clocked that at first of like, whoa, that's like, there's a blonde woman in bed with Bill. Like, that ain't Laura. Are we about to like get into an episode of like Bill's got a hussy on the side? Like, what are we doing here? But then as soon as Ty comes in, there's no one there. And so then your next thought is like, okay, she left, or did I see something? And it turns out that it's Bill who shall be seeing things today.
Yeah. Okay. So this entire framework is that Bill Adama has his own mind palace. He said, look, Gaius Baltar's not in this episode, but damn it, I'm going to make sure he's represented here. He has this sort of, I would imagine this is the home that the two of them occupied when they were previously married. And he kind of goes to this location liminally, unlike, again, sort of like the Baltar stuff. I don't think it's from like a metaphysical, literal perspective. You know, he's not, people don't overhear him talking to Carol Ann throughout the episode, but basically he goes there to seemingly kind of like sit down with Carol Ann every year and sort of look back upon their marriage, kind of have like a check-in with one another, though, as will be revealed over the course of this episode, it is much more Bill checking in, and that,
yes,
especially as Lee gives his perspective on what his relationship with his mother is like, this does not necessarily seem like the Carol Ann that some of the Adama men remember. This is more so quite literally a projection of what Bill Adama needs in this moment on this particular day.
Ty is telling him, hey, look, I know this is a tough day for you. We've got a lot that we need to look at. There's like there's some stuff in the airlocks that we got to look at, but I can be in charge. You can just rest up. And Bill's, it's fine. It's okay. But he's clearly having a hard time. Private Jaffe comes in to bring him coffee.
Jaffe and coffee, he'll talk about, trying to recite the mnemonics later. Far and away the easiest thing, like they share the vast majority of the same letters between the two.
Jaffe brings me coffee. Jaffe brings me taffy.
I think that
saltwater Jaffe.
I think what Adama should have done is change the names of the privates to correspond with the duties more. It's like, hey, you're in charge of giving me massages. Your name is Private Blussage. And so it's like, I don't need to remember that much.
Yeah,
I would say actually just cut out the middleman and just give them, like, much like back in medieval times, right? They say the last name Smith came from the number of people who worked as Smiths in the various towns. Like, just have Adama give them a new name, like Flavor Flav, a nickname based on what they do for him. I think that makes the most sense.
Maybe that's how some call signs have been made. It's all just like mnemonics for Adama.
Yeah, I think honestly, listen, not to say that he should be exercising, a huge amount of control, but like, if I were in his position, I would want to make things considerably easier on myself.
Yeah. I think there's a lot that I don't agree with when it comes to Philip Shepard, but one thing I do agree with is he named everyone in Stealth R Us.
Exactly. Though I think the nicknames, listen, not to besmirch Philip too much, I think the nicknames eventually became a little too one and the same. Like, once he became more quite literally specialized with the nicknames, that was a lot easier association. And maybe Adama would experience the same thing where he's like, Oh, crap. Okay, you're thing 1 and you're thing 2 because you kind of look alike. I don't know. I'm running out of the creative juices at this point.
Yeah. Okay, so we're also simultaneously, as Adama is dealing with his former marriage, we are going to be dealing with Chief's current marriage to Callie. We've got little Nikki here. We've got little Nikki.
Dad, don't go into work.
Yeah.
It's going
Remember
to
we
be the exact opposite of hell in that it will be freezing.
Yeah. Yeah. How many times have we talked about little Nikki on this podcast now? I think this is
We've
at least the third.
This is the third. I think
Yeah.
we've
There was
yeah,
the
we've
first and
officially
then the second time where I didn't remember that we had done it one time previous, and now I remember that we've done it 2 times previous.
they call it a hat trick.
Down the hat trick. The
Or a
baby.
field goal, like when we played the basketball game in the climactic moment where my brother disguised himself as a referee and I sucked him up into a flask.
Is that what happens?
That's so the conflict of Little Nicky is that his 2
Yeah,
brothers
please.
escape from hell, and so Little Nicky is tasked with going to hell before his father Harvey Keitel falls apart as
Yeah.
Satan. And so what he has to do is somehow like convince them or get them in proximity of this flask to trap them in there so he can take them back to hell. And so one of them happens at a basketball game, if I remember correctly.
If only it was a pyramid game. That'd be even more on brand. So the babysitters are sick. Callie is
I will
going.
also say, like, listen, childcare can be tough to come by
Yeah.
nowadays, let alone in the very dire circumstances that they're in. But like, they talk about dropping Nick off at daycare, like
Yeah.
that's
But
pretty dang good.
there's just like not a lot that they can do, and it turns out that like there's also people at work who are sick, so Callie's gonna have to show up, and Callie's like, wait, why? Like, shouldn't I be here like with our kid? And Chief says, we're shorthanded, so get to work. Chief really wanting to make sure that he's not the only person with an income in this household.
Yeah, exactly. We're making
A lot of
ourselves
stress.
exactly. We're not dinks anymore, so let's just become what Dioc, double income 1 kid. I mean, the way he expresses it, and the thing
Hot
that
Dog's
Kelly
got a problem with his Dioc. We'll talk about that
exactly.
soon. Yeah.
I think that what Kelly calls out later on, I mean, it is so interesting because I mean, listen, I'll be cards up here. When I found out that Angela was pregnant, I mean, the first thing that came to my mind was sort of this abject anxiety and fear, and not just my current mental status, but just the idea of
Yeah.
like my life is forever changed. I like my life right now, and luckily, I've been afforded the opportunity to get to do a lot of great stuff that I have gotten to do before, while also having this amazing child on top of it. But I also could see from Chief's perspective, like this manner of how much stuff has changed on New Caprica, but also like the simultaneous denial that he might be in, and also the struggle of I'm in this incredibly important position, arguably one of the most vital positions on board the Big G, and like I'm having trouble balancing that with my personal life as
Yeah.
well. That causes him to make an incredibly selfish decision that nearly leaves his son as an orphan. But I thought it was a really interesting thing to focus on, especially again for a character that has kind of been on the sidelines, right? The thing they make the reference of in the previous on is from a couple episodes ago when he's like, yeah, me and the missus, we're on the rocks, which I was like, oh joy, we get to find out about this couple that like we really saw nothing become of them until they told us that they were married and she was pregnant. And so it's nice to see their dynamic a little bit more. And again, I felt a little bit of association from his perspective of just wanting to sometimes feel like you can go back to before, that it's just an extra thing added on when like, no, taking care of a living, breathing child changes your family dynamic forever. And while it can be additive, it still changes the formula quite literally as he is, bringing in formula for his
Yeah.
child to feast on.
So Chief's agitated in this episode. You could tell that Chief is in a bad mood when he's gonna lay into Figursky of all people.
What did Figursky do?
Yo,
Figursky's like his guy.
you gonna show up to work today? Yo, Figursky, you gonna freaking do anything? You lazy motherfracker, you gonna do anything? And Figursky's like, I didn't do nothing. He's like, that's the point.
Yeah, like
He's mad at Figursky.
the last thing we saw Figursky do was like Chief let him off the hook for a little bit, being like, yeah, you know what, we can fix that Viper later on. Come on, let's enjoy the fights. Like Figursky, if anything, has been one of the most loyal employees to Tyrell.
That's
And Trick
Figursky.
and that's I mean, that's the toughest thing, right? Is like if you're the closest to this person, you're also the most likely person they're gonna take it out on. And so
Yeah.
he pays for being the right hand of Tyrell at this point.
Yeah. There's been some damage in Airlock 12 from the most recent Cylon attack. No one has visited it since that attack, so they need to go and do some like work on it. I do think one thing I like about this episode is the idea of, okay, you know what? Let's check in on like the deck crew and the
Yeah.
cleaning
Yeah.
crew on a mundane routine assignment. Like I do think that there's a lot of fun to be had in something like
Totally.
that. I kind of wish that it didn't just turn into like, now we're trapped. Like, oh God, we're running out of air. Like, I feel like we didn't have to heighten it so much. Maybe I'm alone on this, but like, I would have been down with just like having this be a little bit more existential of the two of them having to do these jobs and like figuring out what they really mean to each other over the
Yeah.
course of doing that without this extreme life or death circumstance behind it. That feels very network TV to me, as opposed to like a really good prestige drama that I think could like make this talkier and little less action packed. That's my note alongside something that I like about the episode's structure.
Yeah, I agree with that. That look, I'm very happy that, especially from a storytelling perspective, it gets so tired for us and for the writers to have to feel like big galaxy ending threat comes like every few episodes or
Yeah.
so. So I love, again, we talk about TNG. How many episodes of that, Josh, is just like, yeah, let's just go like visit a planet. And like, yeah, maybe some big shit happens, but like these are people just going about their rote parts of their job rather than the climactic stuff we usually see. I agree. When the airlock door first closed, I thought we were just going to be in for like this sort of bottle episode locked in a room trope of like, okay, now these two really have to hash it out. I don't know if we really needed the big existential threat of like, and now you both might die and freeze to death. Though we'll see what that ends up kind of portending moving forward. But it was an interesting way to at least, welcome us in, right? We're far from turning cold, but this is sort of the end of our cold open. Is that they're hanging out, they're patching this up. They get just a regular old patch job, but before they know it, Celix hits the button and all of a sudden klaxons go off and the door closes.
So funny. There's a moment where I like half a second where I'm like, is Celix just like closing the door because she's like so annoyed with these two people?
I thought it was going to be like, oh, well, you two are going to have to sort this out. And you're not leaving until you do.
I think I would have enjoyed that. I think that would have been better.
No, but that, you know what that would have been? That would have been like, that would have been a version of Unfinished Business, right? Where it's like, all right, Starbuck and Lee, you're not leaving this ring. Or like, all right, Roslyn and Adama, you have something unresolved. We need to hash this out.
Yeah. But Celix didn't like press a button that like gets them like locked in there forever. It's some sort of automatic response to a pressure drop, which means there's a leak. Leak? I don't detect any leak. Classic First Contact, speaking of next gen. Chief finds there's a patch that's leaking, and it's not bad right this second, but the levee's gonna break. Like, we're in a difficult situation here if we can't fix this up soon.
Yeah, Chief is like, don't worry, I remember that story of the little Dutch boy at the dike. Like, I'll stick my finger in the hole. But he stuck like his pinky in it instead. He's like, oh crap, nope, I just made it worse.
Yeah, as his like pinky gets sucked out into space.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a big problem. Big problem we're gonna have to figure out. We'll spend a lot more time on that storyline in a bit. But first, some more of Bill Adama's Mind Palace. We go to Bill Adama's Mind Palace, and he's reciting the names of these junior officers to remember them. Jaffe brings me coffee. Jaffe brings me coffee. Coffee brings me taffy. I wish their names weren't the same. Like, he's just like going through it over.
Oh, I like
over
that. Yeah,
again.
there's a private coffee that brings him taffy.
Yes. And so Carol Ann is like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why are you bothering? And he says, you never change, do you? And she says, yeah, it's one of the joys of being dead. I get to be.
And also of just
that's
being
the thing about being dead. These people keep getting older. I get to be the same age.
Exactly. After life, after life, after life.
Yes, that's right. That's correct. So we're getting like a little bit of the attitude from Carol Ann, who was also telling Adama, you may need to hurry up. You got to go meet with the president. She might like the bad boys, Billy.
Yeah. But then also very much calls out again that like clearly he's not being visited by a spirit when she's basically speaking his inner psychology aloud, right? By saying like, you're once again bringing up a godlike facade to keep your distance because you don't want to be hurt.
Yeah.
And so, again, this is very nice because sometimes something that can exist within these very psychologically complex characters, Josh, especially these like big brooding men in leadership, is like they're not necessarily going to be as open with their feelings. Bill Adama certainly has more so than other ones, but like this isn't like Harrison Ford in 1923, but at the same time he's not going to be like, and this is all my trauma and how I express it. And so it's nice to have character and devices like Carol Ann sometimes to be like, yeah, this is why you're feeling what you're feeling, just so you and the audience knows.
Yeah. So Adama is going to meet up with Rosalind, who has come to the Big G in person, but she's like stir crazy in Colonial 1, and she kind of wants to spend the day here because she doesn't want to just like go back to the ship. He says that this is OBE, overcome by events. Was that what you thought OBE stood for?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have FUBAR later on, so I suppose, could have to check out a different OB, depending on what hot dog gave perhaps his other partner, if it is indeed what we think it is.
Rosalind shows up. She's got an agenda that Tori has written for Baltar's trial. There's some theoretical questions about which laws should apply here. And Bill tells
how about all of them?
Yeah, and Bill says, all right, well, if we get the lawyers involved, everything's going to take months. And so she says, okay, I agree. What I want is an organizing committee with legal experts, but I need a chair who can make decisions and won't get bogged down in the legalese.
Exactly. Like, well, we don't want to.
And he goes, wait, what? It says the legalese. And she winks again. And he's like, why are you doing the winky thing? It's Lee, okay? I want Lee to be the chair of the thing.
See, that's a loophole. You could say like, well, it's not legal. It's LEEGAL in what we're doing right now.
This whole operation is perfectly legal. Why do you keep winking every time you say legal? I'm not.
See,
why did you wink again?
And how you get away with that is you tell Colonel Ty to do it. And so when he winks, no one will ever know.
No one will ever know. No one will know. And they'll be like, you betrayed us. He's like, no. I winked.
I winked at you. That's gonna be the crux of the season 3 finale climax. It's like, oh my god, we didn't know you'd betray us. Why not? I winked at you.
I winked the whole time. So he's gonna talk to Lee. Meanwhile, Rosalind's going to the gym. We're gonna get buff.
I was trying to think. Yeah, I guess they do have a gym, right? That's how Hilo helped Lee get into shape.
Yeah. How this is the Big G. They have to have a big gym.
That's true.
It's in the name.
Big GYM.
Big Bill is going to go to the briefing room, and while he's on his way to the briefing room, Carol Ann is going to continue haranguing him that he's gotten past caring about his subordinates. He just gives them looks. He says, well, I never was able to intimidate you. And she says, yeah, because I knew you and you were just Bill, the husband and the father who wasn't there. Who is Bill Adama anyway? Man, the ghost of Carol Ann really sucks.
Yeah, but like...
It's usually pretty spooky when Carol Ann and ghosts get involved, though.
Yeah, and I will say...
She got sucked into the Dratus!
Listen, I will say... Again, I clocked almost immediately, and I think it's from my own perspective that I'm like, oh, she's just like that negative voice in his head. And if so, like, seen. Very much seen. So, yeah, I very much get it. As annoying as this character is, like, God, does that represent just that naysayer that's constantly in the back of your head being like, you imposter.
Yeah.
Like, people don't know who you are. Look at the front you're putting up. You think that you're doing well, but I know the way that nobody else does how much of a fraud you are deep down.
Yeah. This Battlestar is clean. He's going to get to the briefing room. It's been 49 days without Cylons, we hear, Mike. So where's that putting us right now in terms of our most recent episodes? Are we getting...
I imagine it's past the Eye of Jupiter stuff, right? So, taking a break from all your worries, the Woman King and A Day in the Life take place over the course of like at least a month and a half.
Yeah, so a good chunk of time has passed. Nacho is thrilled that it's been 49 days, no Cylons.
He's like, thank God it's not those 26 days. Otherwise, we have to have an asterisk next to it.
49 days. Yeah, so Hilo goes and sits next to his boy, Hot Dog. Who knew that Hilo and Hot Dog were so tight that they have a secret handshake? They do a little bit of a secret handshake. Then they sit down. Then Hot Dog starts scratching his Nacho. Just in public, is sitting there manspreading and just going ham on his dong. He is just scratching that thing. And Hilo looks at Hot Dog's like, bro, what are you doing? And Hot Dog goes, I got a rash down here. And Hilo waves his hand as if to like shake the germs off of it. And he goes, hope she was worth it. And he gets out of his chair and moves to social distance from Hot Dog. And it kills me. It cracks me up. Hot Dog, what are we doing? Who wrote this in and why?
Yeah.
Mike, was somebody just like, all right, great joke we're going to do here. We're going to have Edward James Olmos's kid have a dong rash.
Well, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, EJO did not have any involvement in terms of writing.
He didn't direct this one, Mike. They got this one. Would this have happened on EJO's watch? I don't know. Had they been trying to fit in a Hot Dog has an STD storyline into the show for a long time, but Big Bill was protecting him all along. Well, who's protecting him now? He's in his mind palace. He's too distracted.
All right, I have a theory here, and I think it's, look, the writers had their day with Leodama in the first part of this season. We don't need to relitigate the fat suit because Leodama is going to be doing his own litigating in episodes moving forward.
Yes.
So maybe they thought like, okay, we can't do any more like really stupid stuff that harms the character of Leodama. So we can't harm Bill Adama's son. We can harm Edward James Olmos's son. Could this be some like misplaced writer's room ire towards Leodama, and it's now towards the next best thing, the real life son of like, all right, now Hot Dog has a rash. Yeah. Let's make a fun little moment about that. Yeah. I will also say, like, Hilo did not have any problem walking into a possible pandemic situation last episode and facing it head on. He is absolutely grossed out by whatever Hot Dog has to offer.
You know, like like walking into the pandemic in a professional capacity, right? You know, this is not something he's psyched about, but he is a professional and he's doing his job. He's just sitting down at work, hanging out with his friend before the big call, and watches him just furiously scratching his wiener at work. I do think there's a big difference in which one's like going to yuck you out a little bit more.
Is there going to be a major plot line coming up in a future episode where like, all right, you've got the Cylon base star in your sights, Hot Dog, fire away. He's like, I can't. I'm too itchy. I gotta take my hand off the trigger.
I can't put my hand on the joystick. It's on a different stick.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, but when it comes out that Hot Dog is a Cylon, the tell in retrospect will be that he had crotch rot. A classic tell for any Cylon.
I'm surprised his crotch wasn't glowing red when he was scratching.
I'm surprised that you haven't been tracking which characters have been scratching their junk across Battlestar Galactica, because that's how you would crack the Cylon case, Mike.
Ah, I see. So anytime
go back and watch during our
scratches
hiatus.
Their crotch, it turns out that they were a Cylon the whole time.
That's it. I just think it's so funny. Lee gives a speech. He says it's not enough that it's been 49 days. The only number you need to remember is one. One mistake. That's all we need to do.
My favorite U2 song.
Yeah. One mistake. The loneliest number. And two could be as bad as one if you make two mistakes. So he says we got to go out. We got to do drills. All this stuff. Starbuck, for what it's worth, stays behind and like. They have kind of a chummy moment. It's like maybe they're trying to like build back something resembling friendship now that they've seemingly made their choices here.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, all right.
You like this? Did you like that interaction or what?
I mean, it is interesting comparing it to what Callie kind of accuses Tira of later on, which is like, oh, you're just trying to go back to normal and we're not going to acknowledge all the stuff that's happened in between. It's kind of what Lee and Starbuck are doing, right? Of like, yeah, we had our moments. Let's move on. The only reason I don't like it is it would confirm to me like, all right, shit, that storyline is well and truly dead. I like it here so that it doesn't seem like we have Yet another episode where the two of them are bickering back and forth. And it seems like we're in this rare sort of period of the cycle where like Starbuck respects Lee's position as the CAG. I'll give it a couple episodes and I'm sure she'll snipe at him and it'll lead to more arguments and then we'll relitigate their, entire complicated dynamic. But right now she does seem in a bit of deference to, the way that he's feeling, which is pretty much like yeah, it's great that the Cylons haven't been around for a month and a half, but like we know from experience, they could get the jump on us at
Yes, at any
point in time. So do not be complacent. Don't
And
sit
so
like they can't have us sitting here with our wieners in our hands when they
No.
pop in and destroy all of us.
We can only afford one Roddy crotch. We cannot afford more than one. And because of that, Lee has his hands full, he says. Big Bill comes to Lee and says, Rosalind has this thing. She wants you to be on the thing. I used to watch you like obsessively read your grandfather's law books. Like, you were thinking about the law as a profession once upon a time. This could be interesting for you. And Lee says, very nice of you. I have a full-time job. I'm the CAG 24/7, too much responsibility on my plate. I can't do this. So he turns it down for now.
Yeah, what I do find interesting going back to when Laura first suggests Lee is that she says that she's looking to bring on somebody who does not have experience in the law, but has, the ability to distinguish what is right and what is wrong. And again, that feels very like seasons 1 and 2
Yeah.
Lee Adama to me. I feel like the Lee Roslin relationship is something that we unfortunately kind of left back in the past. I really, really like that dynamic.
We haven't done much with it. Yeah.
Yeah, especially culminating, in the season 1 finale where he helps stand up and like holds Ty at gunpoint basically to help Roslin. The two of them get imprisoned together and escape at the beginning of season 2. It's a good callback to that dynamic and the fact that in those moments, in even something like Bastille Day, Roslin was like, okay, this is somebody who is a military brat and obviously someone who is a valued member of our force, but like also kind of has this distinguishability to be kind of a moral compass that I think very unfortunately has been lost in a lot of other random shit, be it random storylines like Black Market or this tryst / romantic entanglement with Starbuck and Dee. I think those waters have become muddied a little bit. So what I'm hoping, especially now that Lee has assumingly accepted the job at the end of this episode, is like, we'll get a little bit more of that original flavor Lee Adama back, the one that I fell in love with all those years ago.
Okay, so Chief's work on like getting them out of this situation has made it worse. Airlock 12 is like threatening to explode. Adama shows up. He heads to the CIC to discuss rescue plans with Lee and with Ty. They have a half hour of air left. It would take an hour to cut through the door, so they cannot do that. Exploding the glass would also kill them, it turns out, so they can't do that either. The only available plan is to blow the thing open, have a raptor waiting, and catch them. So they have to be out and exposed in space without any protection for a period of time. That's the best plan they've got, so that's the plan they're going to do.
This, again, is so Star Trek coded to me,
Yes.
Josh, of like, we can't get through here through conventional means, but if we briefly, fuel the dilithium into the warp core and essentially blow ourselves up just a little bit, it should get us out of the nebula so that we will escape, the imminent threats that are coming towards us. It's these, like, not even Deus Ex Machina, but just coming up with these wildly ridiculous solutions that, of course, will work, though. I know TBD on Callie because she's in a freaking metal tube by the end of this episode. But again, as a devout Star Trek lover, I absolutely loved this solution of like, all right, we're just going to blow the thing open and hope to catch him as they get sucked out into the vacuum of space.
Yeah, so that's the plan. And when Chief and Callie hear the plan, they're like, really? We have to do that? And Bill's like, look, you could live up to a minute without a vacuum. You got to trust me, okay? They're like, oh gosh, I should have just let you stay home with that kid. So
I'm not even supposed to be here today.
I'm not supposed to be here today. So Callie is going to ask about care plans for Nikki should she and Chief die.
You're mean to my mom, Reese Witherspoon. She's an angel.
She's an angel. Is that what little Nikki does?
Yeah, so he is half. Well, he does get killed at a certain point. Spoiler alert. In the middle of the movie, but because he was doing something.
Spoiler alert before the spoiler. Now I know little Nikki dies.
Well, they only briefly. Well, here's the big spoiler, Josh. He goes to heaven because he did something good. He meets his mom, Reese Witherspoon, and he also, would you believe that the Happy Madison universe, Josh, is low-key connected because one of the other people he meets is Chubbs, is Carl Weathers.
How did I never know that? That's incredible. That's
incredible. So he ends up showing up there. But that's, he's able to finally meet his mom and have a talk with her before the big third act.
Kind of sounds a little bit like this episode of like Bill going into his mind palace and meeting up with his Reese Witherspoon, except his Reese Witherspoon's a nasty piece of work.
Well, have you seen Reese Witherspoon in Big Little Lies?
Yeah, I guess. So they're talking about options. Lee and Dee come up as an option, but no pilots. Nikki can't go through this twice. So Callie asks if Nikki can go to Susan Deckler, a trusted neighbor, Mike. Susan Deckler is who they're going to give the kid to. But we're not going to have to worry about that because we're going to make sure that they stay alive. We'll blow open the airlock. The doors come off. It nearly blasts Athena and the Raptor. And thank God she's a Cylon with Cylon instincts and was able to like right the Raptor quickly enough.
Yeah. Also, maybe, I guess putting it in good hands, maybe not a great decision by the team to be like, all right, 3 of our main characters, get in this Raptor in this very precipitously dangerous situation.
Yeah. So they survive, they make it, and Lee is going to go to Adama after the fact to let him know, Chief and Callie, they're okay. They'll be all right. Also, hey, I just realized it's your wedding anniversary, isn't it? And I guess they just don't talk about mom all that much.
Yeah, and this is it's an interesting moment beforehand when Adama is watching Lee in the briefing room where they comment about how Lee is like both of us, proud, stubborn, and angry, and he's like, the thing deep down though is that I really believe in him. And Carol Ann, again, in one of her rare moments of clarity, is like, tell him that he does not know that. Please talk to your son. He's in his head about a lot of things. It's okay if you are saying the quiet part out loud by telling him that you love him and you believe in him.
Yeah. Yeah. But Lee also says that, like, mom was no Reese Witherspoon. She's no angel. She was unstable. She had mood swings. She got drunk, too drunk after you left. She lost control. And in his mind palace, Adama asks Carol Ann, is this true? And she says, yeah, I couldn't find a way to live. I couldn't find a way to live without you. Their kids needed a father. And you made the wrong calls and the biggest decisions of your life. We were wrong for each other, but you couldn't admit being wrong about that or would call into question all your decisions. So Adama tells Lee, despite all of this, I did love her. And Lee says, well, I don't know that she loved you.
Yeah, okay. So this is incredibly interesting because, again, when it's painted as Carol Ann being this sort of vector for the most, self-flagellating elements of Adama, it really makes a lot of sense, especially when she really dresses him down saying, you walked out on me, the brilliant commander who could lead his men into combat, but he couldn't find a way to live with his own family. Like, it sucks because from the way that Lee is expressing things, like, often in these situations, it takes 2 to tango, and there are multiple sides to every story. And so it makes it all the more sadder that, like, Adama is, from our perspective, blaming himself for his family falling apart by having Carol Ann tell him, like, yeah, I wouldn't have done all this stuff if you hadn't left.
Right.
He said, like, they needed you. They were our children. And she responds, they needed a father. She corrects him for that, which is like, listen, parents are important. Fathers are important. You don't necessarily need one to become a morally upstanding member of society, in my opinion. And so I think that it's unfortunate that Adama is kind of removing the blame entirely from Carol Ann and putting himself as 100% to blame. At the same time, this does make sense as the man who several episodes back says, it's my fault this entire series happened. Yeah. I'm the one that let the Cylons invade. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened if I didn't do this one thing many, many years ago. So very par for the course, but I really liked Lee's perspective as well, because I think it was a nice reminder to us that of the role that Carol Ann functioned, which was not to say necessarily that, again, his absence hurt this family dynamic and certainly made her maybe a little bit more unstable. But at the same time, from what Lee was talking about, she did not seem like the most perfect person either. And it just serves as an example of the warped perspectives that people can take up in our mind and in our memories, especially posthumously, right?
Yeah.
This is not an opportunity to bring Caroline on board where she's like, yeah, actually, you know what? I did do all this stuff. I think from Bill's perspective, because he is somebody who is so eager to say it all falls on me, he is painting this portrayal of his ex-wife that is shunting everything onto him when it seems like in actuality it was much more 50-50, if not maybe a little slanted in her direction over his.
So Celix is going to bring Nikki to see Chief and Callie. Chief is doing okay. Callie, like for a bit of time, is just like he's like talking like, "Hey, Callie, here's Nikki. We're gonna get through this. Everything's gonna be fine. Hey, are you alive? Because like you were like lifelessly looking at me, and it seems like
so
you're dead."
Snow White. I was gonna say, actually, speaking of Star Trek, she kind of looked like she's gonna get launched into the Genesis planet at the end of Star Trek 2.
Yeah, and so like, could you like give me any sign? Okay, so sorry. And she like puts a hand up, just like to let us know, like, yeah, she's alive, but like it was kind of weird for a second there.
Can we just like remember how Callie has had so much bad shit happen to her? Like, remember one of her first appearances where like
She was like getting sexually assaulted, and then
like she was about to get raped, and so she ended up like biting a guy's ear off.
Yes.
And then she killed Boomer.
Yeah. So Callie has had some ups and downs for sure. Right now, down for the count, not forever. She'll get out of the chamber. Okay, it's all right. So Nikki's little hand goes on the chamber. We'll find a better balance, Callie. Lee goes back to his quarters, and there is a box filled with Grandpa's law books. Adama has sent them over with the note that says, "For that day when we all have the time," which certainly leads us in nicely to Adama's big scene with Rosalind coming right up. But I love this. I think that this is a really cute moment.
Yeah, and I think for him, it's a matter of like, at least from my perspective and from the plot's perspective, him like loosely assenting to this idea of like, yeah, you're gonna do this down the line. Like this will become a role that you will take on at some point. To Lee's point, I think Lee's very valid in being like, I have like not even a full-time job, a job that should take up like 28 hours a day, and now you want me to be the head of this law committee as well. But I do think this is Adama. Again, while he is not necessarily, he's a character who might sometimes tell his son, like, I love you, I didn't want to see you gone, etc. This is more so what we typically see from him, which is like this sign of sending the books being like, yeah, I know what you're into, and it's fine, and this will happen eventually. So let's just both acknowledge it and kind of nod our heads mutually and move on.
This scene is so cute. Rosalind and Adama. Is. Rosalind gives him a mystery novel. This is not a loner. You don't loan books.
I was going to say, that was one of their first conversations, right? One of the first pieces of wisdom that Adama taught her, never loan books.
Here's the thing about this episode is I don't like Adama's mind palace, and I don't really like the Tyrell and Callie stuff. But the Adama and Rosalind scenes, like the two Adama and Rosalind scenes, are two of my very favorite scenes with them. I just think it's very, very sweet. And this moment of Adama sort of like allowing himself to like heal from Carol Ann and like stop beating himself up over his failed marriage, that like he's allowing himself to have this moment for the day that comes when we have the time. Adama asking her like, do you think you would have really built that cabin if the Cylons hadn't come back? And she says, well, do you think you left the big G? And he says, well, it's all hypothetical. And she says, it is until it isn't. And then she bursts out that little giddy laugh that Mary McDonnell does so well.
That she, like the last time we really heard her do that was besides when they were, getting high. It was when she was getting ready for the debates, when it was the nervous giggle. But I love this. This is for a show that can sometimes be, a little on the nose with what they're talking about. I love the layers to this, right? That obviously at the surface, build the cabin does not mean building the cabin. I think it means like, would you have wanted to do taxes and laundry together, possibly? And the fact that the two of them are like, between their performances and their dialogue, are kind of both giving their soft consent without necessarily saying so. But I think it's also like a very stark reminder as well, as Adama is going to mention, like, yeah, that's the end goal of all this, right? That's why the new Caprica stuff was so appealing to so many people, to the point where they elected Baltar, was like, we're not meant to just be consistently traveling through space at war. Like we're not just here. We're not just like fighting to like
exist. We're fighting to live, right? And like we're fighting for the chance to get to live life as people again. So it's like it's a very big topic, and I think resonant for a lot of people today. Of like, there's a lot of shit going on, and you're just trying to get through your day, but like you have to remember that it's not just about surviving. You have to find a way to live. And Rosalind is kind of like, I think Rosalind's take on it is even more optimistic than Bill's, it seems like, where she's basically keeping that door wide open. She says, well, look, I got to go, but I'll be back in a few days and we can keep talking about this. And by the way, I totally would have built that cabin, which is like,
I would have built it like 3 times that night if we had the time.
One night, I would have built that cabin. Yeah, in the same way that baby goats is code for sex with Mark S. I think, we're looking at similar territory here. So like Rosalind basically like putting it out there, like, yup, I would have. Yeah,
which I think, I mean, I'm glad that they talked about this because
we also theoretical until it isn't, Mike.
I mean, it's not even theoretical though.
Do you want to put the Laura and Bill frackometer on the board? How long until these two build a cabin?
Oh, that's season 4 material. Like, this is not happening in the final 5.
How many episodes from now? Let's make a bet. It's been a minute.
How many episodes are in season 4?
There are, I believe it's 20. Let me triple check.
30 within 35 episodes. They're
going. Real. Be a realistic human being with me.
Last time. Fine. 17. No, what? 18.
18 episodes. Okay, hang on. There are. Oh, I'm just trying to do math.
So that is 5 episodes of this season and 13 episodes of season 4.
Okay, so by episode 13 of season 4.
By lucky 13, they will get lucky. Why not? I'm ready to get hurt again.
Okay.
There we go. Congratulations to episode 14, Rosalind and Adama, who will most likely bone.
Okay, so the team behind the curtain, let it be known, we are putting the countdown back on. 13 is the number that we should care about. Not 49, not 1, not 2, unless they're getting real freaky. 13. Season 4, episode 13. They have to frack by then. What are the stakes on this one, Mike?
Were there stakes last time? My humiliation? Isn't that always on the line?
But it's hard to humiliate somebody who is so shameless.
That's my secret, Cap.
That is your secret, isn't it?
I'm always humiliating.
I'm just constantly humiliated.
I will say that I am a little surprised that while we were like sort of beating around the bush, but not really in this scene, we really haven't made a mention of like, remember when they kissed in season 2?
They did.
And like when she came out of her near-death experience, they just haven't really talked about that ever since.
Not really. No, not really. That didn't turn into anything. It was just like this like sweet little moment. These two older peeps, just like there's still life. There's still life. There's a life to live.
So I think there will be a life to live 13 episodes into season 4 when they find their way to each other. Because look, it's a big step forward for Bill. Not to say that he's fully over Carol Ann, and not to say he would, prioritize one organ over the other in terms of what guides his decisions. But at the same time, I think this is a very meaningful check-in with the two of them that I think does leave the airlock door open for his heart to get sucked out.
Totally. Final scene is back in the Mind Palace, and Carol Ann saying, "Okay, good job. Promise me you won't get the wedding photo out again." And Adama says, "Well, it would be so easy to hate you, but that would be a lie. I don't hate you. I'll see you again next year," which I think is actually really cute and kind of healthy.
Or unless Carol Ann's like, "No, I'm trapped in this picture. Please let me go." He's like, "I'll see you next year."
My God.
That would be the ultimate punishment of like, you have to check in once every year and then you live in just purgatory for the 364 days.
Yeah. As we move into the MVPs and LVPs, I was going to say that despite the fact that we end on like a nice note for Carol Ann, she's going to make her mark on the MVP LVP list with a -2 because I'm giving her an LVP point and so is Mike.
Yeah, I mean, like, listen, yes, it's falling into the trap of why she's been created in this first place as a character, but, like, she plays the role effectively. She is someone that is voraciously blaming Adama and dressing him down and, frankly, treating him a little unfairly. And yes, that is technically part of Adama, but it is technically Carol Ann right now. You could call her head Carol Ann. if you will. And so not a great introduction
Not
to the
great.
show, even if it is not necessarily the real McCoy.
To continue the LVPs, Chief Tyrrell is getting 2 dings. Mike,
Yeah,
we're both giving Chief an LVP.
I mean, not a good episode for him, considering that he admits, he's like, yeah, I was selfish. I wanted to work exclusively with my wife, and now we both might die. Like, very terrible look for this man.
Yeah, not good at all. And then final LVP, putting the P in LVP, hot dog. Go see Doc Coddle and stop scratching your junk in pubs.
You know what? This would have been a great case for Dr. Robert. Like, you know what? I have a doctor I could send you to.
Yeah, maybe that's why they should keep Dr. Robert around. It's like, all right, this is how it's going to be just for like the dirtiest cases.
Exactly. Like, okay, the ones that Doc Coddle doesn't want to see.
Yeah.
Hand off to Dr. Robert.
I don't want to touch the guy with the dick rash. That's you, Dr. Robert.
Exactly.
It's all about okay, fine. He's not a Sagittarian, right?
Yeah.
As long as he's not a Sagittarian, I'll touch all the dicks.
Are you? I'm gonna break it off in my hand if you are.
Yes. Okay, so hot dog. That's not good. Go to the showers. Clean yourself off. A big walloping 3 MVP points coming to Big Bill Adama. 2 from you, 1 from me in this episode, Mike, which I think is very deserved. It's a little bit for lack of better choice, I think.
Yeah.
I will note, and this is sent our way by the great Brendan Fitzpatrick, that this was the episode that Edward James Olmos submitted to the Emmys for consideration for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series for this season. I think he was very proud of his work in this one.
Okay, I mean,
he's very good in it. He's very good in it. And these Rosalind scenes are very, very good. He's very good often. I don't know if I would have gone with this one. I think maybe I would have gone with like the boxing episode.
Yeah, like his that speech screams awards bait, right?
Yeah.
Like that was like our midway, so say we all chicken speech.
I will say that these 3 MVP points make it so that Bill Adama is currently the MVP of season 3. He has eked out past Athena by a single point.
I mean, listen, Athena was our MVP for season 2 as well, right? So like it very deserved if she repeats. At the same time, if there is a new leader in the clubhouse, that's also very fun because we love variety here.
We love the Hollywood Reporter. I'll give another MVP point. I'm going to give one to Laura as his best scene partner in this episode. I think Rosalind telling him I totally would have built that cabin is just so layered and like
much like logs on a cabin.
It's such a great come on, like I feel like it's just like it's spicy in like a really sweet way. So I love it. I think
like spicy and sweet at the same time. Like where it's not like completely raunchy, but she's like, if you're picking up what I'm putting down right now.
100%. Love to see that they still got it. Final MVP point of the episode. You're going back to your buddy Lee.
Again, like you said, not the best range of options. You and I were trying to figure out before this episode, like, who is responsible for coming up with the last minute idea to save Chief and Callie. If we had like an actual name, I would have given them that. But like Lee is somebody who, clearly has a moral facet to him that allows him to be offered this new role. At least I'm grateful for the role he played in the episode and the role he played with his dad being like, yeah, just to bring a little bit of reality to what's going on. Like, it was not all candies and rainbows with mom as well. And I guess he is part of the crew of 3, not to obfuscate Starbuck and Athena that do rescue the other 2. So it's like a pretty good episode for Lee. And let's also be honest, it's been a long time since this dude has seen an MVP point.
He needs some help. He was really struggling. He still is. He still has -4 points for the season. So Lee,
tied with Gaius Baltar, if that's an indicator of anything.
Lee's got some work still cut out for him. Mike, we like to track the Cylons versus the fleet, but I guess this is backing up the conversation about 49 days. I think this is our 3rd NA in a row.
Wow! So NA gets introduced and really gets off to a hot streak here in season 3.
Yeah, so I think you agree, right? I don't think that there's really anything else to do.
I mean, with the exception of perhaps Chief Tyrrell and Athena's there, but like she doesn't do much. Not nary a Cylon to be seen.
Sure. So 4 NAs on the board. As we rate the episode, which of course we invite all of you to do, send in your scores down the hatch to rhap@gmail.com from 0 to 4.2. gave it a 3.2. I think it's a better episode than it's not. I think it's one of the weaker of the season so far, but not the weakest by any stretch. And I think that the Adama Roslin scenes really save it from me. I think if those two scenes didn't exist in this episode, this one could drip down to the 2s for me.
I think I'm going to give it. So I gave Taking a Break from All Your Worries a 3.4. I gave Rapture a 3.2. I think I might give this one like a 3.3. Let's split the difference here. I think it goes back to sort of the quality that we have been getting, that The Woman King is luckily an exception of like solid, if maybe in the grand scheme of things, unmemorable episodes. Like, yes, I think that I like the purpose that the Caroline character served as, to get, again, a deeper perspective into just like how kind of sad and screwed up of a character Bill Adama is, and the fact that he's in this unenviable position of having the entirety of humanity in his hands, which he himself very much gets hit hard with. It's something that I'm really captivated by. And again, I'd like theoretically this idea of like, he even listens in when Tyril's apologizing to Callie, and he's sort of realizing like, yeah, I watched one marriage fall apart. I can't let it happen again. Now, it doesn't really translate because like this is more life or death. I will say the Callie and Tyrell stuff, like, I'm not going to say miss me with it, but I wouldn't say it particularly moves the needle for me. I really need like a big moment to feel on board with this partnership. And it certainly helped. But unlike the two of them on that Raptor, I am not fully on board with them. So I would say it wasn't like the strongest stuff, and does paint Tyrell in a pretty bad light, though again, I can certainly sympathize with his side. So all that is to say, not a particularly bad episode considering what we just experienced, especially, but I would not say like, oh my God, this is outstanding character work. It is solid at best.
Yeah. Okay, well, before we frack off, a couple of things. One, a great note from Battlestar Galactica, the great podcast that was recorded by Mark Bernardin and Trisha Helfer. They had the director of this episode on, Rod Hardy, who...
Oh, isn't that the problem that Hot Dog had?
No, the problem might be that it's not Hardy enough. This is exactly about that, by the way. So Ron Hardy said that scene with Hot Dog and the Rash was not in the script. They wanted an extra scene in the episode, and this idea just sort of popped up while they were filming.
It's interesting because there is a deleted scene for this episode, so it feels a little insulting to be like, that's got to go. Yeah, now, Hot Dog scratching his nards, that's primo content right there.
Rod Hardy says that one of the wonderful things about this cast at this point is you could just put them in a room and they'll make a scene. They're very good at those little small details. We wanted the cast to feel free to experiment and try things as they were in the scenes. So a little bit of just like improvised wiener humor. That's what we got. And that made it into the episode. You never know which sketches are going to get cut after rehearsal and make it into the live show, and which ones you're surprised should have been cut, but they make it into the live show.
Speaking of which,
there's a legit deleted scene in this one too.
Yeah, so crotch scratching, I'm glad it killed at dress because it just bombed on live air. Yeah, but I will say, actually, not to say that the crotch scratching was any better, but like this was so atonal to the actual stuff that happened in the episode, Josh, to the point where like that cannot be Bear McCreary music that is backing up this scene. It is, not to say Dodo music, but it's like very kind of like goofy non-BSG music where it is Gata and Dee basically gossiping of like, oh, so did you notice this is the third time the president has been here this week? What do you think that means? And then like Ty catches them giggling. He's like, what are you two laughing about? They're like, oh, nothing. We need to let you on. He's like, give me that report. On your way. And then they turn around and they keep giggling to themselves.
I'm so glad that it's the hot dog scene that doesn't get deleted. It's just such an outlier. It's so weird. It's so weird.
I honestly have that rather make the episode than like dedicate my time to saying, okay, here's the deleted scene. Oh, Hot Dog has a rash on his penis. Like, I'm kind of in a weird way glad that made the edit over this really odd, like, bye-bye birdie telephone hour between Dee and Gata.
Yeah. Hiya, Billy. All right. So no jumps, 7 fracks, 4 of which belong to Callie, 1 from Chief, 1 from Lee, and Frack and Figursky with a very earned, what the frack did I do? So we got some more fracks on the board. Nothing to do with Cylon model rankings. Nothing to do with Cylon reveal rankings. Mike Bloom, next week's episode, the last we'll do before a mini hiatus, is called, I'm not making this up, Dirty Hands.
Wow, I didn't realize that whoever was on Tough as Nails season 1 was a big BSG fan, considering that was one of the names that existed for the subsequent 4 seasons of one of the 2 teams facing off. Is there another episode called Savage Crew down the line, Josh, that I'm not aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, and I can tell you that this next episode won't be about Hilo contracting whatever disease he got from shaking hands with Hot Dog.
Yeah, this is just one long PSA over the course of 3 weeks of like, listen, it's cold and flu season, people. Wash your hands.
Wash your hands. What do you think is going to happen in the dirty hands of the fans, Mike? What is to be done in season 3, episode 16?
I was gonna say that's a season 50 voting mechanism that I don't even want to think about in the dirty hands of the fans. Okay, there's a couple things here. Dirty hands to me implies like maybe some sort of like blood money or like doing illicit activities. It's been a while since we've dealt with like black market-esque stuff, right? Of like, oh, these are criminal enterprises that are happening. I could certainly see, especially in this very odd stretch of episodes in season 3, that they're like, sure, let's throw another one in there where we focus back on the civilians and have our main characters try to stop up some sort of criminal enterprise that's happening. Or maybe a main character is discovered to be like involved in one of these criminal enterprises that they have to figure out how to deal with it. Like we had the random cat standout episode a few weeks back of like, oh, here's this random bridge crew member who's actually money laundering on the side from these PyCons. What are we going to do about it? The only other option I would think, I'm casting the net wide here, is that Gaius Baltar missing from our screens 2 weeks ago, missing from our screens this week. I think we are going to get at least one cameo from Gaius Baltar in this next episode. And maybe he becomes the central focus again after he was a few weeks back.
Okay, we'll see next week when Battlestar Galactica Dirty Hands becomes the topic of the week on Down the Hatch. Make sure you are subscribed. Send in your feedback, your scores, down the hatch, RHAP at gmail.com. You can also hit us up on socials. I'm at Round Howard. Mike's at a Mike Bloom type. Mike Bloom, what's going on? What do you got?
Well, the big thing I want to plug, Josh, is that you and I got the chance to get together on Mike and believe it or not, talk about Survivor. And this was a really special experience because I obviously, as I've said many times, got to be out there for the preseason of Survivor 48. And these preseason trips often involve attending the events of the premiere of the first 3 days. And so I did a podcast for the RHAP patrons where I talked about my experiences getting to see the premiere of Survivor 48 live in person from a very different perspective, what matched up, what didn't. And I was joined by you, Josh, and this is very special for those that are not aware. And this is, something that predates DTH by about like 6 or 5 months. You were the person that helped bring me into the fold when it comes to getting to go out onto set for the Survivor preseason. And
how about this? The entirety of Down the Hatch, all of it is more recent than me being out in Fiji. The entire thing, all of it.
Yeah, talk about a beach that makes you old. That beach
Time has flown. Time has
exactly.
Flown.
So it was really nice to exactly. It was really nice to get sort of your perspective on it, to sort of have you ask some questions based on your own experiences about like what has changed, what hasn't. And as I talked about, again, getting to experience some of the stuff we saw and didn't see on that really jam-packed episode. So that is available again to the patrons of Rob Has a Podcast. So if you are a member, go to your Patreon website, go to that respective account and check it out. It's up there, a whole hour and a half more of Josh and I shooting the shit, talking about what happened in the islands of Fiji.
In the islands of Fiji. Well, we're going to stay up here in the stars for one more week before a little bit of a break, before I go to some islands of my own. That is not any kind of a tip.
Josh?
No, I'm not. Nothing. Zero.
Imagine.
No chance. It's pure vacation. Before I go off on vacay, we will be back talking dirty hands. That's going to be next on Down the Hatch. We'll be back shortly. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.